The cold wind is blowing in my face. I've lost everything on this winding path. Loose stones crumble beneath my feet. My breath hangs heavy in the air. The trees below have disappeared, and the earth feels farther with each step. A blinding white envelops me. Snow lashes against my eyes. The world dissolves into frost and sky. The clouds disperse, and the white orb above us greets us with its holy light. My friend, we have arrived. We're finally at the peak. Peak is, quite frankly, quite an overused word, and not one I like to use when describing things. Anything nowadays can be peak. The food you overcharged for yesterday? Peak. Rent a girlfriend? Peak. The movie you said was good but was actually bad? Peak. But when you use the word to describe so many different things, it loses its meaning. For if everything is it, nothing is. But once in a blue moon, you come across something so beautiful, unparalleled and genius that you can't find any other word to describe it. But peak. I reserve glaze for only the things that warrant it, and this warrants it the most. This word is something I only reserve for a masterpiece, on a caliber that's truly worth it. A word I specifically reserved for Domestic Girlfriend. Domestic Girlfriend is without a shadow of a doubt the biggest dumpster fire ever conceived. It's an anime and manga that's infamous within the community, and one most people wouldn't dare step within a 5-meter radius of. An anime regarded as the trashiest of trash, the absolute pinnacle of garbage. So today I'm here to attempt the impossible, sell you on a franchise that has the worst reputation in anime manga history, something completely unparalleled in quality and demise. But I'm here to argue that if you ignore its reception, it's actually a masterpiece. And to sell you on this, I need a pitch better than anything you've seen on Shark Tank. Hell, I need the equivalent of Mark Cuban selling a pen. So let me lock in for a second and sell you on one of my favorite manga of all time. Because calling this a dumpster fire honestly does it a disservice. This thing is more like a nuclear fallout that somehow brightens up the universe before exploding into fucking supernova. Words cannot describe what this series made me feel. But today I'm going to attempt to put those feelings into a coherent sentence by making this video. Because this has been a long time coming. Ever since I first read this series 6 years ago, it has lived rent-free in my head. And whether you like it or not, this is peak fiction. This is the most unapologetically ass thing I've ever read, but it's so fucking good. So how did a story about dating your stepsister, becoming a writer, and no chromosoming your way through life become one of my favorite manga ever made? Well, let's talk about Domestic Girlfriend. So before I go ahead, I think I should provide you with the premise of the story. Okay, so let me break it down for you. There's this guy who's in love with his teacher, right? One day, he randomly goes to a mixer and meets this girl at a karaoke bar. During their conversation, she reveals that she wants to lose her virginity, simply because she's at that age where she's thinking, why not? I've got nothing better to do. The anime basically opens up with the two of them hooking up. Afterward, they part ways, assuming they'll never see each other again. But then, the guy goes home and discovers that his dad is getting remarried. When he meets his future stepfamily, he realizes something. His new stepmother has 2 daughters. One of them is the girl he has slept with, and the other is the teacher he's been in love with. And that is the premise of Domestic Girlfriend. I fucking can't with this shit, bro. Now, you don't have to be Albert Einstein to see where this is heading. This series is infamous for a reason, okay? Okay, calm down. Calm down, I promise. It's better than it looks, okay? While most people get turned away from this, I was intrigued. Because the promise this premise establishes is pure chaos. From the very beginning, you already know this family drama is going to turn unbelievably ugly and dysfunctional. But you just can't bring yourself to look away. You're the deer in headlights watching 1,000 tons of metal slam directly into you. And you love every second of it. Because usually when romance anime try to explore love as a subject, they half-ass it so hard you could argue romance isn't even a part of the show. I knew this anime was built different when they had sex in the first episode. Okay, so first and foremost, what actually makes this manga such a complete crash out? And the answer is pretty much everything. But the single biggest reason this series gets so much hate is because of its anime adaptation. See, in the manga, we actually have this revolutionary concept called character development, something the anime completely and utterly completely deletes. As the Holy Prophet Giga Kwan said,
What the anime did is that it just took all the trashy moments in the manga without any of the character moments and just speedran it.
and that's the main reason so many people dismiss the anime as a whole. Only its worst parts are put on display. What the anime completely fails to show though is just how emotional and mature the story can become. Past the first half, the story evolves into something entirely different, becoming far more introspective and grounded. Yes, the premise and overall setup are sloppy, but what makes this story so unparalleled, complex and intriguing is the fact that it places genuinely good and realistic characters into that mess. As a result, you end up watching these characters struggle against the completely fucked up premise the author created for them, and that's where this manga succeeds while most others fail. A lot of romance manga rely entirely on a central gimmick, because underneath it all, the author doesn't actually have much of value to say. What makes Domestic Girlfriend so compelling is how far it evolves beyond its original setup. So far, in fact, eventually, the premise stops being the main appeal altogether. And trust me, I didn't expect to think that. In the beginning, I was just like everyone else, drawn in entirely by the train wreck. My suspension of disbelief was in the fucking stratosphere. There was no way the story could be any good. Right? But somewhere along the way, my doubts just started disappearing. Wait, what is happening? Why do I suddenly care? Why am I emotionally invested in this absolute dumpster fire? And that's the weird genius of Domestic Girlfriend. Beneath all the insanity, there's an actually sincere and emotionally grounded character drama hiding. Admit it or not, this is peak writing. The best comparison I can make is this. Imagine the worst soap opera you've ever watched. Corny, messy, badly paced, everything is shit. But it somehow turns out good and you actually become invested in the slop you're watching. Yeah, this series tapped into a side of me I never knew existed. My need for wanting something unapologetically ass. It filled the hole Rent-A-Girlfriend left behind and created a much bigger one. What really stands out is how much you end up feeling for them, even when they're actively trying to avoid the situation they're in. They can't help the way they feel, but you still see the emotional toll it takes on the entire family. It turns what could have been a simple drama into something oddly relatable. They're just stuck in an ugly mess of a situation, trying their best to navigate it and find some kind of closure. It feels distinctly human, which is something I didn't expect. At times, it almost feels like a realistic depiction of a relationship. The characters actually behave like real people would, and that alone is disorienting if you're used to typical romance manga and anime. It honestly woke me up a bit. Romance stories had kind of conditioned me not to take things too seriously, but this actually made me stop and think, wait, their actions have consequences? What is this? Am I actually reading a romance now? What separates this from something like Rent-A-Girlfriend is that I actually care about the characters. Kei Sasuga writes them in a way that makes them feel sympathetic, even when they're making mistakes. I don't necessarily relate to their specific situation, but I do relate to the experience of adulthood itself. The confusion, the emotional conflict, the attempt to navigate life properly. They can't fully control how they feel, and that's what makes it so painful. It's not the circumstances themselves that hit, but the very human struggle of trying to exist within them. What surprised me the most though was how much my feelings toward the series changed over time. Past the halfway point, I was far past caring about the trashy premise it started with. This manga isn't afraid to throw curveballs your way, constantly shifting directions in ways you can't fully predict. In a way, it almost feels like a parody and satire of the genre it presents itself as, which makes a lot of its twists hit even harder. Yeah, there were definitely times where it caught me completely off guard, but never did I feel like it took me out of the story. Because even then, there are just these beautiful moments of human introspection. I forgot just how good the character writing was past the first half. I got so hooked, I accidentally wound up rereading the whole thing when making the video. I know it sounds like satire, but this is genuinely some of the strongest character writing I've ever come across, and I would have never expected it to be found in a manga like this. The parallels, the fine line the author treads between making it a masterpiece and a trash rom-com, it's so clumsily executed, but with so much heart, you just can't help but adore it. In a sense, its imperfection is what makes it perfect, and that's not a thing I say often, which brings us to the ending. From my understanding, the job of an ending is to evoke a final summed feeling from the time and effort culminated throughout the story's journey, no matter how big or small that emotion may be. What makes Domestic Girlfriend different is that it says,
And then life said, fuck that.
And just completely thwarts everything the story has been building towards, and instead ends it in the most catastrophic way possible. No team won, nobody got what they wanted, and Kei Sasuga managed to piss off every single person who read it. This ending taught me that you can take the manga out of the trash, but not the trash out of the manga. I couldn't fucking believe this when I first read it. This shit has more plot twist than a fucking Spanish soap opera. Fuck me and fuck this story. Rui was best girl, and then she just decided to throw for the love of the game. Never have I ever experienced such a betrayal from a character. This was worse than Rachel in Tower of God. Hell, this was the worst ending in the history of Best Girl. And what I found more hilarious than anything is that everybody, and I do mean everybody, was Team Rui before the breakup, but she fumbled the bag so unbelievably hard that after, everybody became Team Hina, and then nobody got on any team. How this author managed to introduce multiple love interests, get the reader invested in every single one, then somehow make you hate every character involved by the end is a level of genius compared to the greats. But funnily enough, this manga was almost cathartic. I think the ending is what truly cements it, because while the series strayed pretty far from its roots early on, it never completely lost sight of what it was at its core. A glistening gem covered in absolute shit. We went from a trashy rom-com to a full-blown romance to the biggest crash-out ending in manga history. This clears the ending of both Rent-a-Girlfriend and Chainsaw Man combined. And the craziest part is that I don't think we'll ever see another ending like this. This wasn't just a train wreck, it was the summit. With extensive knowledge, I can only assume this was written with a certain audience in mind, but what angle Kei Sasuga was going for is something I will never know. Suffice to say, she hit their target demographic, because it hit me. The night I finished the ending, I genuinely couldn't sleep. I was pacing around my room, shaking from some unholy mixture of anger, amazement, and disbelief. I tried distancing myself by playing games, but nothing worked. My hands were trembling so badly I couldn't aim. I loaded into Cold War thinking I could clear my head, but I was playing like I had autism. I have never had a physical reaction to a story like this before. My brain genuinely struggled to process what I had just read, and that is an emotion reserved only for a masterpiece.